so I suppose you understand why cultures like the Chinese that, have these magnificent histories of thought and ability, and although it's not science as the way that, we do, you understand why they feel excluded. What do you think too? Because, we hear a lot now about this idea of like Aboriginal science or Indigenous science, from the Canadians and stuff like that. Or what does that mean, and what's your opinion on that? Like,
it's junk. There is science, right? And it's not owned by anybody. It's not even owned by human beings, right? It's just trying to get to the truth. As I say, I define it as with reason, with logic, and with evidence. Now, did Aboriginal people use science? Well, of course they did, right? Everybody was using it to some extent. The Western world has brought it to its magnificent pinnacle that it is now, and it's going to go even further. But there's science that was used by Aboriginals and Indigenous people, of course, right? But there's nothing special about that, in the same way there's nothing special about the way the English have used it. It's just that possibly used it more than most other groups, that's all. But science is science, full stop.
Is it just observation? Because when I'm listening to Indigenous people talk about this, they go, well, we observed things, kind of proved it, and then acted on that observation. So
well, but they also used logic there as well. They used reason as well. They observed, they made the measurement. Right, they didn't write it down in a notebook, and they didn't do a statistical analysis, but they sort of did in their head, actually. And then they used logic. And then what they did is they thought, well, I think that what happens is such and such, that if you wait for this time of the day, the fish will be there and you'll be able to catch it, all right? And then they will test it, because they'll come back again and again and again, and they'll find out, yeah, that actually works. Maybe not all the time, but it works most of the time. So they were using repetition, which is an important part of what we'd regard as a scientific process. If another person comes at the same time of the day, will they essentially observe the same thing? So yes, they were doing science. Caveman was doing science. But there is nothing special about the way an Aboriginal person does science as opposed to a Japanese person or an Englishman.
Again, fundamentally, it's about the definition of science. If that's the case, there has been science as long as there has been conscious human beings.
Yes.
But just absolutely. Not brought into resolution, and systemized in the way that we understand it now. Would that be kind of fair, or
yeah, that's right. We've formalized it to a massive degree. So we've got journals, and we've got repositories of data and all the rest of it. But it's really just a growth of the same thing. When caveman first managed to light a fire by rubbing sticks, they were doing science. They made an observation. Somebody rubbed the sticks and they saw who knows how it exactly happened. And then they were able to repeat it, and they worked out what the best sticks were and what the best conditions were. And then that was science right back. Gosh, how long ago was that? It was science.